So we're here at Courthouse Farm. It's a really lovely day actually, almost blue skies, clouding over a little bit now and very cold. So we're all wrapped up, and even though we normally make fantastic wreaths, and we will do those as well, today we'll do a forager's wreath, which means you can forage for anything. Obviously dried things that are sort of semi-dying and going off, and really looking at natural colours that are in the garden and that we can all really draw upon. So I've got my French bread trolley with me, and we're going to go and find two wonderful young women in the garden who I sort of said, please go and gather some things. So come and have a look, and they don't want to talk, so I'll make them talk. Come and join. Oh, it's such a lovely day. Come on and come and have a look. Trying to find things that will work in a forager's wreath. And there's Kathy, hard out at mulching dahlias. So we'll talk to Kathy later about what she's up to and what still needs doing in the garden. But let's go and talk foraging wreath first of all, okay? They're going to try and avoid us, but we'll get them talking. Hey! So, ladies. So lovely to be here with Victoria and Fevan. They're on the corner of the site here, foraging for whatever they can find. And this is Victoria and that's Fevan. They're both really a great help and been wonderfully positive. And now Victoria has been doing this for years. We used to call her the lady who loves dead things. In fact, you love dead flowers, don't you?
I do, yeah.
And she really loves foraging for things. So it's a real inspiration actually, and remember that it doesn't matter how small your garden is, you can use virtually anything. And of course there are some wonderful roadside things as well. Victoria, what did you bring today from the roadside?
Oh, honesty and some pampas grass.
And where did you find them? Just on the way here?
Someone was cutting their pampas grass down in the garden, so I borrowed that. And the honesty was just growing on the roadside. So.
Isn't that amazing? Now, and I know that Fevan went for Fevan. Didn't you go for a lovely walk the other day?
Yeah, we did.
In the woods near Clevedon, and you found some amazing things. Isn't that amazing? That's just wandering around the garden here, and this is really stuff that's in any garden, no matter how small, and certainly on the roadside. So even if you're only in a flat. And look, I've got to show you something over there. Look at this is our natural area, and I'll just show you. Look at these. Aren't they beautiful? Really fantastic and naturally dry, and you'll find things like this everywhere, and even the ends of grasses like this over here. You know, these wonderful grasses, look at those, just fantastic for a wreath. And all sorts of other things you can see on the hill over there, you know, the brown dried areas. They're all things that can be used, and you can actually add colour to a wreath, a forager's wreath, with ribbons and with all sorts of other decorative things that you can find, and we'll show you that a bit later on. But let's go and catch those girls up and start making something. So remember, it doesn't matter how big your garden is. Obviously our garden is vast and we're really lucky, so we can show you much more. But even the smallest garden will have all sorts of things that have gone over, so hopefully you haven't cut them yet. You know, but things like all the sort of dried herbs that are here. These are gladioli. I mean, they were splendid, but aren't they incredible now? So a couple of the larger gladioli elements. Yeah, and they may seem, you know, sort of very brown and not very interesting, but really a forager's wreath and a winter wreath that's dried wreath is really all about texture and about natural colours. And look at these. I mean, these are all the sort of dried herbs that look wonderful. And of course they all smell delicious too. So just a few little pieces here and there, you know, would make all the difference. So I know that Victoria and Fevan have been busy collecting all sorts of things, so we'll see what they've got and go up and see them now. And of course grass heads can't be beaten, they're just fabulous, so we've got lots of lovely things here. So grab a few, and of course the bunny tails are just gorgeous. So bunny tails, look at those, aren't they fantastic? Got to have some of those. actually wondering whether we should put together a forager's wreath for everyone. Maybe we could actually put together the materials and send them to you if it's something you feel you can't get hold of. But as I said, you know, have a look in your garden and I bet you'll find an amazing amount of things you could use once you've seen what's possible.
That's how far we've got.
There, that looks so pretty.
No, look.
I love it. I love it. They look so
They are
gorgeous.
really beautiful.
So what we need to do really next is show everyone how you actually do this and tie in the little bunches, and actually this is the beginnings of your forager's wreath. So maybe, I hate leaving with this lovely sunshine, don't you? But we could go inside, find some big tables and actually show everyone how you actually do it. So we've now come in from outside. Even though it's beautiful out there, we've just sort of gathered ourselves together, gather all the bits and pieces, the dried foliage, all the things we've foraged, and also we started to make a sort of little gatherings, little bunches of things that will be the makings of the forage wreaths. But let me show you more. We're going to see the girls. I've got the pinnies. So jackets on, pinnies on, girls. Can we cope with the cold? Or do you want a pinny over the top? Which colour would you like?
That rusty.
That rusty one. That's your favourite, isn't it? Oh, you're going to have the blue pen. The blue one. And I'll have this big orangey one. So there they are, hard at it. So we're now going to show you that really anyone can make a forage wreath. You can get the foliage from your garden, from, you know, this roadside, from a lovely walk down by the river, or in the wonderful woods we've got virtually everywhere. And so this is how it's done. See you in a minute.
Okay, so you've got your little selection of all your cut foliage.
And it's beautiful. Isn't it surprising what you can get from the garden? I mean, look at that. And these wonderful seed heads, they're absolutely incredible. And these little fluffies, they're my favourites, along with the bunny tails.
So then start bunching bits together. Use your hands to hold it.
That's
into
an
little-
after. Yeah, that's an
little
after
bouquets.
there. Yeah. And Victoria's just now putting an original one together. So Victoria, it's good, isn't it, if you've had all your things laid out like this
That's
with your
it.
ready-made string, then you don't get confused. And you can use string or you can use wire, and you can use any colour. And actually, depending on how big your bunches are, will be how big your wreath is, because we use the same size wreath ring, which is this ring here. And then you can make either a rather modest, beautiful dried wreath, or you can make something really quite bizarre, can't you, and big, depending on what you go for and what your character's like. In fact, when we've made them with people in the previous years, Victoria, hasn't it been
The
fascinating?
personality definitely
Yeah.
shows through.
You have all these different people turn up and they're all lovely, and then you'll get someone who'll make the most delicate little detailed precious wreath, which is very modest, and then someone else will make something that's completely mad, isn't it? I love it.
So you're aiming to make around 20 of these little bunches, which we now bind together with some string. So just wrap the cord round and then tie it off quite tightly if you can. And there we go. So yeah, about 20 of those, and then eventually this becomes the wreath.
And you can see really anything goes. I mean, you might think something's got a broken end to it, but actually if you pop it in with everything else, it just looks lovely. And then if you want something a little bit more detailed, a little bit of dark foliage, or a poppy head. We had some lovely poppy heads as well, didn't we, Victoria? They were smashing. Or you might find a little dried flower like that, which I think is a little echinacea, which has seen better days but is now being reborn here. So then you've got your ready cut string, wrap round. There's no special way of doing it, and if you get it wrong, well, you can't get it wrong, can you?
No, you're just binding
just start
them.
again.
You're just binding them.
Yeah. There you are. You don't have to be skilled at anything. In fact, that's why this is so wonderful. An ordinary pair of scissors, and if you have got secateurs or, you know, quite strong scissors, that helps, because it helps to sort of trim off the bottoms afterwards, doesn't it? But then you can do all that later if you want to. So there you are. That's another one for our wreath. And then we can add really dramatic things after, depending on what look you want. And you can even add colour afterwards, obviously with ribbon, and even spray dried flowers as well if you want to do that as well, to add some brighter colour. And of course you can get some fantastic cones, and cones we can tie in as well, which will add that really Christmassy look. So if you can find pampas grass, the wonderful pampas grass. But we'll start putting the actual wreath together now and show you how those little bunches come together on the wire frame to create your finished wreath.
Yeah, okay.
Now Victoria, how many little bunches have you got?
I'm hoping I've got just over 20.
So we're thinking 20, 25, depending, little bunches, depending upon, you know, how dense you want your wreath ring to be, and it depends really, of course, how big your bunches are. I mean, someone might make great big bunches of dried flowers, someone else might make rather delicate ones, so it's a bit like a sort of unique unfolding of a bit of creativity, isn't it, Victoria?
That's it. So
I'm going to have a slurp of my tea while you tell us what to do next.
Okay, so what I would do is get a big piece of string and start gathering some of your bunches, and we're going to bind these on. So I would go for them running along the ring of the shape of the ring, and you want to tie these on. I'm all fingers and thumbs.
Well, what's lovely is the rings are so gorgeous anyway. I mean, they're copper, aren't they? So they're so pretty, and in fact some people like bits of the ring to show. And if you don't want it to show, you can actually wrap string, or you can put moss all the way over this first of all. But for this experience, you don't need to do that, do you?
No.
So looking at our wreath ring, you can obviously leave the wreath ring very natural, and some people love the sort of copper wire of the wreath ring to show with our bunches on, or to make it stronger. And if you want to actually feed through bigger pieces later that might be heavier, then what we can do is actually wrap it, just so you've got a more stable base to work with. It just takes that little bit longer, but you can either use a raffia, or you can use a string, or you can use a wire. So all you need to do is tie it on, and obviously get yourself a long piece, and it's slightly laborious, but whiz through, wrap as much or as little as you want to. You can do it every centimetre or every half centimetre. And what you'll find is that'll just give you a stronger base to actually work on. And let's leave the raffia there and try with string for a moment. So we'll just tie that on any way you like, wrap it round. As I've said, it will be laborious, but it will give you that extra strength to actually be able to rely upon later when you're threading things through. So that's the string. And then when you get to the end, you can just tie it off and start another piece. So all the way through, it doesn't really matter whether it looks very decorative because you're covering it anyway. And again, that's with the string, or you can just use wire. The wire, as long as it's thin enough, it's quite easy to use. You can just, obviously you don't have to tie it. You can just twist it round, keep it in place, and then wrap the wire round. A little bit more. Watch your eyes, be very careful. Obviously, the wire can spring back and get you, but that will just give you a bit more strength and whiz that all the way through. I mean, to be honest, it'll only take 10 minutes at the most, even 5 minutes. Being an impatient sort of person like me, I like to get things done quickly. It's my worst and best feature. Okay.
We're just using the ring to give us shape. And then your next bunch needs to go on the inside, covering the string of the first one. And you might want to choose a smaller bunch for the inside ring, like this. And slowly a wreath will appear.
Before your very eyes. And actually it'll be wondrous, because we've had people here before, haven't we, Victoria, who said, oh, I can't do that, I've never done anything creative, and been terribly unconfident. We've had occasional husbands brought along as well, haven't we, and boyfriends. And do you remember that lovely couple who came last year? And husband and wife, weren't they?
Created the most fantastic wreaths.
Wasn't it fantastic? And his was a really, I've got to say, it was a sort of, what's that funny phrase? It was a sort of macho sort of wreath,
It was
wasn't
very
it?
macho.
And it was incredibly strong, dark textures and everything. And hers was poetic, and it was just gorgeous to see them. Maybe we'll try and find those pictures and put them on Instagram.
So when you come to do your third one, it's quite a tricky one. You don't want to go too high, otherwise your wreath is going to end up huge. You want to try and bring it much lower, so that we're working our way round the wreath.
Do you know, that's looking lovely already. And in a way, if you do want to go huge, you know, Victoria, some people have made bunches where there's a great spike of pampas grass coming out.
A bit asymmetric.
Yeah, and that creates something, you know, really mad. Yeah, it is just great what you can actually create out of old dried stuff. Or what is it, old dead stuff you call it?
Pretty dead stuff.
Pretty dead stuff.
So you just have to kind of get your selection, just have to play really until you find one that fits right. So it might be that a nice twiggy one in there works better.
And you might have a few of your, you know, you keep the same theme for all your bunches. You can see all the bunches that are here, Victoria's done, actually have the same sort of theme. They might have a poppy head in them, they might have the sort of dried fluffy foliage, they might have the seed heads, but they're in a similar theme. And then Fevan's just brought these other ones over, and I don't know whether you can see the difference, but I'd say Fevy's chosen some beautiful, some very light sort of foliage here, and hers are sort of fluffier really, aren't they? So they'll probably make a bigger wreath. You can see here, look at that. That's a little bit of fern that was found on the roadside. Isn't that just magical? And the seed heads. And here we've got some hydrangea, which we can pop in later. So here we are, look, a mound of, you'd say, old dried things, which will become something quite magical soon. So I'm going to start another one over here while Victoria continues with that one. And so I'll be a bit later. But we'll just see what the two look like at the end. And as I've said, it's quite handy to cut your string first of all, because you find this, you've got so much stuff on the table, Victoria. You can't find your bits and pieces, and you've got your hands full. So yeah, if you can be organised, but really, does it matter? It's all about having a bit of fun, isn't it? And in fact, we're doing this during the day, but I mean, you could get together with a few friends in the evening, couldn't you? Obviously, we've got to social distance at the moment, but a little glass of something.
Absolutely.
A nice cup of hot chocolate. I mean, you could have a bit of music on, you could sing along a bit of Christmas music, couldn't you, Fev? In fact, you love singing, don't you? And why not get the whole family involved? Your husband or partner may not want to. It might say, men don't make wreaths, but actually we can say that's not true. And the kids would love it. Blimey, this is really fluffy. I mean, that's plenty on there, isn't it? What have I got on there? 4, 5. Yeah.
In a way, you'll build it quicker, as long as you don't put them on top too much. You have to keep working your way round.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, look. Yeah, make sure you keep moving round, otherwise you'll end up with a wreath that's...
Oh, you have to go down.
Yeah, the temptation is to keep going on top. Oh, definitely.
Well, this is great, isn't it? We're having such a lot of fun. And actually, it's only been, I suppose, putting this together 15, 20 minutes. And Victoria, you can see, I was obviously talking too much. Victoria started before me, and she's doing a fantastic job. She's only got a few more bunches to put on. I'm actually about halfway around here. And we were saying, really, it's joyful doing this, isn't it? Yeah. And we said each one's unique. But what about the sort of foraging itself? It can take as long as you want it to, can't it? It can take half an hour, it could take 3 hours if you go on a walk, or...
Combine it with some, a walk, or... And it's the gathering and the little bunches that take the time. Once you get to this stage, it sort of comes together quite quickly, really.
So really, if you were doing something, with a family member or with a friend or with your partner or even on your own, the bunches, I suppose it could take you about an hour to do the bunches, couldn't it? But we'll show you in a little while what these finished ones are like. We'll add a few bits and pieces to them, and then we'll show you some from last year that are still beautiful. So it shows you it's a really fantastic investment. Forever, really. So we're just looking at now, virtually at the end of the wreath now. It's not very long at all, really. And you're bound to end up, because this isn't sort of cardboard cutout stuff, that everything's different. So therefore you might end up with a beautiful wreath, nearly wreath, that's a little bit uneven. And, it may be your first time, so it might have a few little empty patches. So, Victoria, how would you remedy that? It's not the end of the world, don't be upset. It'll just be perfectly beautiful if you actually add a few bits or thread in a few bits.
So you could make up some extra little bunches and just be really gentle, be firm but gentle, and get them in to fill in the spaces. So we've done exactly the same thing. We've made a bundle and we're binding it on. We've just parted the foliage that we've already got, and that'll help give us a bit of more width where we need it.
Lovely.
Your other option, if Helen shows you,
I give you a beautiful hydrangea,
is to take something that's already on a stem. With these, they're quite fat, so I might trim off a little bit of the width. And then what you can do is actually thread it directly into the wreath. Through the back of the wire to then fill in a space.
And then just turn this over very gently and just tie it in with your string.
Or wire into the frame. Chop off any excess. I need a bit of wire, sorry.
And of course here on it. So we're nearly finished now. The girls have just gone to get a cup of tea because we're all gasping here. So we're just looking at those final decorations, and then you can see our finished pieces. You can add ribbon, you can add decorations, you can add thick ribbon, thin ribbon, velvet ribbon. You can even add lovely bits of vintage fabric. And I've said you can add things like cones, Christmas decorations. You can get as kitsch or as classy as you want to. I actually like adding little things like this. Little tiny moving objects too, which we can add to the wreath. And even if you're doing something for children, how lovely to add a little polar bear or something hanging out the bottom. But really you can make it your own. Do something that's just playful for you. Or even, I love these. Or even those little tiny, look at those. Little tiny mushrooms. So we'll show you what those look like later on. But, so therefore, going back to our ribbon, all I do is quite simply cut a few pieces, cut the ends at an angle so they look pretty, tie the top, and then find the bottom of your wreath. And this could be with nice thick ribbon like this, or thin ribbon. This just happens to be the one I've got handy. Or another colour, a different colour completely. Find the bottom, and then just gently turn it over, because they are fragile. And you've just got to tie it on the bottom of your wreath here. Doesn't matter how you do it, quite frankly. There's no special way. And you can be as generous as you want to be. You can tie thick and thin. And then it just finishes off your wreath, gives it that touch of colour, which is lovely. You can see the lovely red one here underneath. Or you can do the thick version here, which looks more flamboyant. Lovely. And as I said, you can do the same thing. You can just wrap little bits of wire around your different cones, and then you can actually put these in your wreath and just push them through and tie them on the back. And the same can be done if you want to go really kitsch and put, bright red little decorations in. Just a piece of wire threaded through, twisted, pushed through and tied at the back. And that can be as wild and wonderful as you want it to be. And the same as I said with your little mushrooms, you can actually wire in your little mushrooms and have those sat amongst your wreath, which look really sweet. You could have, look at this one in here, this would look really sweet. You could have a little polar bear, either hanging at the top, and all you do, put a little bit of wire, and you could have him hanging from the top there saying hello with your wreath. So really, it's all about doing exactly what you feel like doing and having a bit of fun. And don't worry, you can't get it wrong. And they'll be back, they're just coming in with a cup of tea, so see you with our wreaths any minute now. 3 unique wreaths for 3 unique women. What about that then? And then, as we were saying before, you can have different themes. You can see we've got the little mushrooms and a fantastic little polar bear. So anything goes really, just have fun. And of course on the wall or as a table centre or wherever you want to put it. But I just want to show you now something else, because I actually like big mad wreaths. I don't know why, it must be the hair. But so if it was me, I'd probably do a crazy one with all sorts of huge foliage, but of course you still got to be able to handle it. So I just want to, and look, 2 things. You can either add that to your small one, or you can start from big and crazy. So let's start from big and crazy. And again, I've got my lovely bits of string cut, so it's easier not to have to find them later. So right, you can get a whole pile of them next to you here with your scissors. Now, we start with a big bunch, which you're making up of all sorts of things. You can see this fantastic grass, and it may look crazy, but look, why not go crazy? And for the inside, you want to use a smaller one, because you've obviously got to leave a hole in the middle. So you use your smaller one, overlap it slightly like that, wrap round again, wrap round again and tie. Now, of course, if you've got time to do this and you're very adept at doing this, you don't actually have to tie it to cut your string off. You can do it in a continual. But I think at the moment that might feel a little bit scary for people. So again, you want your next big one. Can you see how dramatic that's going to be? Going to be fantastic. And then we put another small one on. And can you see how crazy that's going to be? And you might want to do things like, let me get a great big pampas grass. You might want to make sure you've got, you know, a great big pampas grass coming out even bigger. And I'll show you with one we've done already over here. Put all those to one side for a minute. Gorgeous as they are. We don't want to really lose them, but just for a moment. So coming back to the one that we were doing earlier, which is a modest size, which of course most people would probably want. It's got our ribbon on the bottom. I was just starting to put some mad things in here to show you that if you've got one you've done and you think, oh no, I should have gone crazier, or you suddenly find some other foliage, you know, if you find some, look, all you do is you slide the big pampas grass through. Now you might decide you want to do 5 pampas grass, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way around to make it really mad. You might find some lovely curly hazel and do the same thing. Slide it in, or you might have a combination of things, you know, a little theme of things going round. You might also decide, if you get your gold paint spray out, and you might decide you want to poke in, so you're going into your wire there, you want to poke in some gold, and that could be all the way round, so you go like this all the way round, or it could just be in one area down the bottom or at the top. And just before we go, 1 or 2 other things about ribbons. So that's crazy or subtle, however you want to be. And of course, if you want to do this for virtually nothing, use everything that's Forage. And if you want to add a few things that are slightly more expensive, which won't cost you much, you can actually find things you can buy here from all sorts of suppliers. You can buy dried elements, dried fruit. You can also do things like use feathers within it. All you do is wire the end, wrap some wire around the end, poke the wire in your wreath again, and you can put feathers. So it is fantastic, and dot things like this throughout. Fantastic. And again, this could be sprayed gold, it could be sprayed red, or just left very earthy and natural. I love the earthy natural at the moment, but just a phase you're going through. Sometimes you want lots of colour, sometimes you don't. Finally, we're coming back to that lovely icing on the cake, which could either be a recycled big bow, which is using all sorts of old ribbon. And of course, we know that things like, you know, silk ribbon is terribly expensive. You know, it's fabulous, but it is a lot of money. And if you haven't got that sort of money, if you haven't got anything at home, I mean, laughing really, I went through my scarf bag, and I've never worn this scarf, and I just cut it, and I thought, well, why don't I use this lovely crepe scarf? Tear it through. And there's something lovely about old fabrics. They sort of hang differently. You can get a couple of pieces of that and make a beautiful bow out of that. You could also use, I've got a piece of old fabric here, which I love as well. I've had this in the cupboard for goodness knows how long. All I've done is cut it. Now look at that. Isn't that fantastic? And tie that into a bow. See how beautiful that is? And the other stripe coloured next to it. You could use that one. And I think that gives you a totally unique, totally personalised wreath and wreath decoration. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. So, get creative, be yourself, have fun, and don't worry, you can't get it wrong. Great. Thank you very much for being with us.